a lot of times when quarterbacks, or forget about quarterbacks, a lot of times when professional athletes sign contracts and then say they want out, they really get pilloried. I mean, that just doesn't play well in the public sphere for any athlete. But Deshaun Watson, I'm not saying he's escaped all criticism, but it hasn't been people tearing him down. And I think it's part of what Jalen Ramsey is saying there. He said, Deshaun is a great man. Wow, he's a great man. And a lot of people say that. Most people who have come across Deshaun Watson, who have spent some time with him, who have observed him, they come away saying he's amazing. And so when they see a dispute between Deshaun Watson and the Texans, no matter what the optics are, and the optics aren't great. Let me just face it. They're not great. You just signed a contract in September, and now you're saying it's untenable. A lot of people wouldn't be able to recover from that PR-wise, and Deshaun Watson's doing pretty well, and I think it's because of his character.
You know, I'm not sure. I can't call it. You know, I know I spend 2 hours a day talking to you, and we see this situation the same. And you know, we broadly speaking, we see athlete agency and athlete independence the same way.
Yes.
But don't get it twisted. There are people out there who think Deshaun is completely out of line. There are people in the media who've been critical of him, which I think a lot of that's frankly.
You think a lot of them though?
I don't know. I haven't necessarily done a role or I don't watch. I shouldn't say this as God willing somebody's watching us right now. I don't watch a lot of sports talk television. I don't watch those talking head shows. You know, that's just so.
Those
hey, watch
guys.
us though. You know,
Right.
yeah. You know, but so I can't really tell you how much criticism he's getting and from what corners he's getting it, but I know it's out there. I mean, I know that it's out there because I've had conversations with people connected to him about whether or not it's worth it for him to respond publicly to some of the stuff that's been out there. You know, I think if I had to guess, Michael, I would say the majority are on Team Deshaun because I think the villain in this situation has become an unknown former team chaplain turned, you know, team head honcho in Jack Easterby. Like Jack Easterby has become something of a household name nationally, which is crazy when you think about it.
Right.
So I think a lot of people have pointed the finger at him, both in Houston and nationally, as representative of the dysfunction in the organization. I think when a J.J. Watt, who for all the people who have been critical of J.J. Watt over the years and think he's a phony or think he puts on for the camera to set the other or just whatever, J.J. Watt saying we wasted one of your years, that only helps Deshaun's cause. Not that he needs any more credibility. He has his own. Deshaun came into the league wildly popular. He's been that servant leader the guys just talked about. He's been great in the community. He's been a great spokesperson for the game. You know, it's like Vision in Civil War. Wanda, no one dislikes you. It's like nobody dislikes Deshaun Watson. Like who dislikes Deshaun Watson?
Right.
Like everybody likes Deshaun. Even if you don't root for the Texans, you like Deshaun Watson. So I think he has built up a lot of goodwill that he's benefiting from, but that does not protect him from getting the, like you mentioned earlier, the usual, oh, who do you think you are reaction.
Well,
You know, I mean, like,
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, Michael, at the end of the day, he's still a player. He's still an employee. He's still a black man, a black quarterback. Things have changed, but they ain't changed that much to where he's not going to get criticized by quite a few people
well,
for, like you said,
look,
signing a contract in September and then saying you want out, even though teams do that all the time. And I think for the most part, collectively, Michael, we are more enlightened, when it comes to like, hey, I think people like LeBron have done an amazing job of really kind of, walking so people like Deshaun could run. Like taking some of those, because even if you look at NBA moves, James Harden notwithstanding, a lot of times when players change teams and force their way out, it's not met with anywhere near the same vitriol, not that anything really is, as LeBron James had to deal with. And so it's gotten a little bit better, with just a little more enlightened as we go along when it comes to, hey, teams all the time. Draymond dropped the mic on this the other day. Teams all the time make decisions about the player and that affect the player's future. Why can't the player do the same thing? A contract goes both ways. If a team could break it, so can the player. I think most reasonable people feel that way. And Deshaun does have a lot of popularity and goodwill, Michael. But I think you and I both know. And if you look and listen, you'll hear plenty of, you signed a contract, he should sit there and rot. You ungrateful so-and-so, getting paid $150 million, go out there and play. Last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, I won't ramble too much more. Last thing I'll say that also helps, he's played so incredibly well. And he played so incredibly well despite the circumstances last year, till there's some sympathy involved. Like, man, he deserves better. So I think that's also working in his favor.
Yeah. Now, look, I think everybody's going to get criticism, no matter who you are, no matter how popular you are. What I'm saying is it's not as nasty and over the top as it usually is in these cases. Because I'm factoring in that there's going to be criticism for everybody. Whether it's J.J. Watt, who has done wonderful things, as you mentioned, whether it's J.J. Watt, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, or Tom Brady. Tom Brady gets criticized. So it's going to happen. But in this case, I think Deshaun Watson is a little bit different. And I don't know if it's him, the Texans, or a combination, a little bit of both. But I feel like, Mike, that we are close. You ever feel like, and sometimes I'm wrong on this and you're wrong on this too, but if there's somebody who's been a news breaker in your career, you ever feel
like the hairs
sometimes
on the back of your neck standing up?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Ooh, something's about to happen. You see things start to shift a little bit and you feel like some news is going to break. I feel like we're going to have some Deshaun Watson news. This is what I know is not going to happen. We're not going to be sitting here in training camp, if there is a traditional training camp in the NFL. We're not going to be sitting here in training camp saying, why is Deshaun Watson still on the Texans? I do believe he'll be traded before the draft. Before the NFL draft. I do. Because the opportunity is just so...
That's wishful thinking.
Not even wishful thinking. Because I don't care. I've never, as an aside, I've never really felt the Houston Texans.
Few people have, outside of Houston.
It's like really nothing about the Texans that just makes me like, ooh, they got great uniforms. I like the way they play. No.
As somebody who we both know put it to me recently, they're the early Saturday wild card game. They're just not that team.
Yeah. So I don't really care what happens, but I just think just stepping back from it, looking at the Texans from the Texans' perspective and Deshaun Watson's perspective, it just makes so much sense for both of them to make this thing happen before the draft.
Yeah, but see, I can't base it on that. I mean,
why?
Because it makes so much sense. I think they do things differently in Texas. They just do things differently. The Texans do things differently.
That's a pivot.
They just do down there. They just do things differently down there. I wasn't, not yet. It's more of a tease than a pivot. But I guess I'm just saying, like, the other day I did say maybe the Texans don't have to operate on our timetable right now. The draft isn't tomorrow. It's not this weekend. They could, for all we know, be doing their due diligence right now. They could be, because they haven't said anything. So maybe their silence speaks volumes, you know? Like you've seen a lot of the PR about misinformation. At one point, Cal McNair was calling insiders across the country talking about misinformation and, you know, trying to basically do some cleanup on aisle 6 on the part of the organization. You haven't seen or read much from the organization since he told David Culley and Nick Caserio it's not happening. So maybe that speaks to what you're saying, that something's brewing. They could be doing their due diligence right now, but I would not put it past them. I'm sorry to be a broken record. I just would not put it past them to cut off their nose to spite their face, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And this is the same owner's father who said we cannot let the inmates run the prison. That there is a culture. One of Deshaun's issues, it's not just I'm sick of losing and I want to go somewhere where I can compete, or I'm frustrated by the direction of the team. There is a culture there that if you listen to people like Deshaun, if you listen to DeAndre Hopkins at one point, if you listen to Dwayne Brown at one point, if you listen to Ed Reed when he had a cup of coffee there, it's just not. They're not about this, hey, let's work together life. Like this is how we do things here in Houston. It's eerily similar to the conversation we're gonna have later on. But it's like I could see a world in which, against all logic, they just make him sit. They just make him sit. It doesn't make any sense to the rest of us. But I'm prepared for it. The good news is, so is Deshaun. But I'm not prepared for this to end conveniently around the draft, just because, you know, it all lines up when it comes to the draft picks and, you know, the timing.
Wow, that's amazing.
I believe it when I see it. At this point, I believe it when I see it. I would like to think that they're just behind closed doors, meeting and strategizing. But I'll believe it when I see it at this point. I don't share your optimism that something's inevitable.
It's not even optimism. It just makes so much sense. Because I think you have to start here. I think if you're the Houston Texans, you have to ask yourself, do you think we can change Deshaun Watson? Do we think we can change Deshaun Watson's mind? I'll give him the answer. Answer is no. You can't change his mind. His mind is made up. So if we all agree that his mind is made up, forget about his motivation. Like, if you're even thinking, how hard do we have to squeeze for him to come back? That's the wrong way to look at it. How long can he sit without getting an NFL paycheck? That's the wrong way of looking at it. You have to say, does he want to play here? And if the answer is no, then I think the next path you take is the draft and trades. Because, Mike, you have the opportunity, if you think the Jets will deal with you, and I know that's iffy. I know the Dolphins certainly will deal with it. The Dolphins will give them number 3. But if you think the Jets could give you number 2, theoretically, you could come out of this thing, according to Chris Sims, you could come out with the best quarterback in the entire draft and more stuff if you trade a guy who doesn't want to be there. Like, that just blows my mind. I know Zach Wilson will have to pray that one day he's close to Deshaun Watson's level. But you still have the opportunity to get the number 1 quarterback in this draft,
Mike,
according to some,
Mike,
and other stuff. How could you sit there and pass that up?
You're leaving out one major factor. And listen, I've probably been, we talk about Deshaun Watson. We probably talk about it every other day, if not daily.
Yeah.
You know, so I've probably been guilty of overlooking this as well. So I'm not pointing the finger at you and saying you're not aware of this.
Tell me, what is it?
Got to factor in ego, man. Ego. There are multiple parties involved. Don't underestimate who's in Cal McNair's ear. Don't underestimate what people are telling him. Don't underestimate it's being about nothing but, like, ain't nobody going to tell me what to do. Nobody's going to sign a contract in September and then tell me you want out. I just, whether it's other,
I know we don't have the right
owners,
answer.
They might be concerned about precedent for, you know, something like, oh, we can't eat power, man.
Okay.
Always about
That's
power.
fair.
Again, We'll get to it later. But who's in charge here is what this is going to come down to. Not the logic you're talking about. No, actually, I want to pivot before we go to break. We good.
Okay.
We got some time. You're good. Go ahead.
All right, good. Well, let me ask you this then. And this is the last question I have on Houston. Give me an answer.
Yep.
Can't be a combination. I don't want to hear combination. It's a little this, a little that.
Okay.
I want you to just, if you're betting, if you're hedging.
I'll try.
Who's in charge there? Who's making the call in Houston? Who's controlling the money? Who is in charge of football operations for the Houston Texans among Cal McNair, Jack Easterby, Nick Caserio? Who's in charge?
Yeah, I wish that were a rhetorical question because that's not fair. For you to say to me, tell me who has the final say. I can't, and I don't know that there's a clean answer. That's the problem. Final say on who we gonna draft in the third round. Okay, no. There may be a Nick Caserio. No, that's what I'm saying. No, Nick Caserio may be the answer to that question. Final
say on trading.
Final say on trading Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson.
I don't think that's a one person answer. I don't think that's just up to Nick Caserio. I don't think so. If anybody, it's Cal McNair's call. If anybody is Cal McNair's call. If he's one person.
Is my bibliography tight here? If I cite someone else's work and give them credit for it, I'm good there, right? I'm not passing this off as my own material. I just want to make sure I'm protected. If people say, oh, you stole that. I'm telling you, I did steal it. I'm going to tell you who I stole it from. There's a guy I talk to pretty often. This guy said, look, you don't pay Nick Caserio $6 million a year and not give him the authority to do what he needs to do. That guy's name is Michael Smith. And Michael Smith said that last week. Why would you pay Nick Caserio $6 million a year if you're not going to give him power? So I'm stealing his point. I think it's Nick Caserio. I think Nick Caserio's got the final say.
Okay.
And if he has the final say,
I do want to pivot.
If it's Caserio, he makes that trade.